Hello plant lovers, and look at this beauty. This, plant lovers, is Cattleya maxima, the mountain form. Yes, there are two forms of this, the upland mountain form and the lowland form. The mountain one apparently has shorter, stubbier pseudobulbs, and the lowland one is much longer and more elongated. And this, plant lovers, is the first Cattleya that I have got to flower here in Melbourne, and I am very happy because, as you can see, it is utterly stunning and the fragrance is beautiful. It's a light lilac-y fragrance, but a bit of a higher note than lilac, which can often be quite heavy. This is a really light, beautiful fragrance. My goodness, if you could only smell it. Now, apparently the Cattleya maximas are clearly identifiable by the yellow stripes that you can see down the middle of the flower there. And I bought this one as a division not that long ago because Cattleyas in Melbourne, I haven't really been brave enough to have a good go at Cattleyas just yet here in Melbourne. I've got one that is getting to the age of being able to flower that I got as a seedling a couple of years ago. So we'll see how that goes. But this was a flowering size division, so I kind of cheated and fast forward. And look what happened, it bloomed. But then again, as far as Cattleya go, this is fairly unusual in that it is a high altitude Cattleya, so it does like cooler, moister, humid conditions. Okay, so basics, it's a Cattleya, but it does have slightly different requirements to normal Cattleya, so we'll put that aside and just focus on this one. Like all Cattleyas, it still likes quite bright light, but not quite as bright as your average Cattleya, I think. So I'm giving this medium light, we would say, the kind of light that I'd give most other things, actually, like oncidiums and Miltoniopsis. Not too harsh. I mean, it seems to like it. I know Cattleyas like stronger light, but I don't know, my instinct for this was not to go too strong, and it seems to be responding. I always think it's great to try and imagine where it came from, and obviously to try and replicate those conditions. So this is a high altitude epiphyte, sometimes a lithophyte, sometimes terrestrial, apparently. I guess it will depend on where it finds somewhere to rest its weary head. But that means that it's going to get a lot of water in its vicinity from time to time, which it can absorb quickly, which then flows away very rapidly, like a lot of orchids, in fact. So you need to replicate that, which is not difficult. It just means watering it in the right manner and giving a bit of a mist to encourage that humidity around it. So, light, we've discovered. The high end of medium, but not super bright, regular Cattleya light. I have experienced. It might be different for you, who knows, but that's my experience so far. Water, this I feel doesn't like to dry out, like Cattleyas often do, so I've never let it really dry out, but on the drier side before you water it again, if that makes any sense. And then a good water, and then rinse and repeat. And again, like many orchids in winter, you can ease off a little bit, but don't let it dry out. And because it's a high altitude orchid, it does like a bit of humidity, so I just give it a spritz once, twice a day whenever I'm going past it, and it seems to thrive on that. Temperature wise, because it's a high altitude orchid, you could quite easily describe it as cool to cold, I feel. And it has been living outside. Now, we haven't gone through the deepest of winter with this one, but it does take quite cold temperatures in its native habitat, which is South America, across the top of South America. So the top of Peru and Venezuela and Colombia at very high altitudes. So I feel I'm going to give it a go all year outside and just observe. Cattleyas can take quite cold temperatures anyway. So we'll see. Melbourne, which is where I am, doesn't freeze in winter, and you can see exactly where I am. Melbourne, as you may or may not know, is a cool, temperate city, but of course with huge amounts of variation. But our winters are generally cold and wet, and our summers can be hot and dry, but also quite wet, and we can get extreme heat. So it's a little all over the place, I think. So what I will do with this is keep it outside all the time, and in the height of summer when it's very hot, just make sure it's in as cool a spot as possible and splosh about some water in the morning so there's lots of evaporation and coolness going on. Now, as you can see, this is a division, and you can see that the old pseudobulbs are dying off. Now, you could be tempted to think, my Cattleya is dying, but as this is a division, I'm not concerned because I've repotted it and it has tremendous new root growth coming out here. And so with all Cattleyas, the flowers tend to come out of the new growth. So what you need to do is promote vegetative growth to get a new pseudobulb next year, etc., etc. So I'm not that concerned about these. I think that's just part of its transition from its old home to its new and being sliced off from its other half might turn the best of us a little brown. It has decided to bloom, so I don't think it's in serious danger. So I'm not worrying about that. The rest of it's looking very healthy and it's got amazing root growth. So I'm very confident that we'll get a new growth this year, ready to flower next. I did read that it was an autumn flower, but here in Melbourne right now, it is spring and this bud has just popped out literally of nowhere. I wasn't expecting this to flower until next year. So I'm incredibly surprised and delighted because it is so beautiful. Look at that flower. Ugh. And again, most Cattleyas like to be pot bound. This one is in the smallest pot I could get the root into, and a free draining mix. Same story, an orchid bark mix with a bit of charcoal and a bit of perlite, 1 or 2 grains of slow release fertilizer in there, and my secret root stimulating fungus, the name of which I forget. Actually, I can't pronounce it, and I will put it along the screen now. And I always go for terracotta pots, really out of aesthetics more than anything, because I'm a terracotta pot kind of guy. But terracotta does allow the quick evaporation of water, so it does kind of create a cooling mechanism around the roots of an orchid, and also gives you a fairly good indication of when you need to water it. But really, depending where you are, any pot will do, as long as it's free draining, so plastic is fine. Now you might notice that I have wired this into place because it's just a little loose in the medium at the moment. It's a bit top heavy. I wanted to make sure it was really stable while all its new roots develop into the medium, because I only potted this a couple of months ago. So it's still sending out its new roots and establishing itself in this pot and this medium, but it's doing well. I'm really happy with the root growth it's put out in such a short space of time. There we are, plant lovers. The flowers are just the most orchidy flowers you could ever wish to see. Look at that. The color is amazing. Strong lilac with that incredible streak of yellow, but the fragrance is beautiful. And daytime fragrance, so it tends to sort of turn off late afternoon and then switch on again mid-morning, which is great because you get to experience it. I've brought this inside to enjoy the flowers, but it'll go back outside and then we'll see how it progresses through the summer and into winter and flowering next year, hopefully. There we are, plant lovers. If you can get hold of one of these, they are really fantastically satisfying and rewarding orchids. Look at that. And I have to say, I mean, I haven't had this for very long, I must confess, maybe 2 or 3 months, but it's been very easy. I could not see a flower spike in there or a sheath, and it suddenly just emerged from nowhere. So something has made it happy. Maybe it was the repotting, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's just me. It felt the love. I don't know. But anyway, I'm excited by this. I'm really hoping it's going to thrive and next year send out some new growth for me to have new flowers. So see if you can find it. There is the upland and the lowland. The lowland version of this, I think, requires higher temperature and more shade. The highland version requires cooler temperatures and a little bit more light. But I wouldn't know because I don't have the lowland one. I have the highland one. There you go. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing and enjoying. Look at that baby. I just can't help but show off those flowers. They're the most beautiful things. I'm so excited by that. Anyway, thank you for watching, plant lovers. Feel free to ask a question. I am a rank amateur and know nothing, but all these videos are based on my own experience of orchids I've got to flower. So that's as far as I can offer anything for you. Take care wherever you are. Enjoy whatever you're growing. And I'll see you next week.